everyone, and welcome to another episode of Health by M, the podcast with me, Mathilde. I hope that you are doing well and having a great week so far. Today, I'm going to talk about yoga and Pilates and becoming a teacher within these two fields. And I've actually received a lot of questions about this and haven't really seen any other podcast episodes about becoming a teacher within yoga Pilates. So yeah, I just thought it might be helpful for those of you who are interested in becoming teachers and might have questions around what to think about before choosing your education, how to start, and so on. So yeah, I will go directly into it and start with my story, how I decided I wanted to do this. And I would say that I've always been a very active person. When I was a kid, I tried like every sport you can think of, basically. And I always loved to exercise. I've been running a lot. I've been doing everything from soccer and basketball to sailing, tennis, so many things. And I played a lot of soccer when I was a kid. And when I was around 14 years old, I was running a lot and I felt that I needed a practice that could help me balance out all those runs and tougher soccer kind of exercises I used to do. And by this time, yoga was not a thing at all. I think I was 14 and there was one studio, or not even a studio, I think it was just a class at a regular gym where I used to live. And I went there. It was me and a bunch of old ladies, and I actually fell in love with it. I loved it so much, and it was just such a nice stretch for especially my legs because I was running so much and playing soccer. So yeah, I think I really fell in love from day one with it. But then I continued a little bit during high school, I believe. And then after high school, when I moved to New York, that's when I started doing it not every day, but like 3 to 5 days a week, perhaps. And yeah, it just became something that I really, really loved. It became a part of my weekly routine, and I just felt that I had such a connection to yoga. And I think not just because it balanced out the other workouts that I was doing, because I loved the whole setup of a class, that you get the intention in the beginning, you get to work hard, you get to stretch, you also get to relax towards the end. And I think I also was able to notice a lot of results quite quickly, because before, I don't know, but I haven't really been able to easily build a lot of muscles for some reason. When I was a kid, I felt like I was exercising so much, but I couldn't really see any muscles on my body. But with yoga, I think I could really maybe not see it that much, but I could notice a difference, especially with my arms. Like when you first start and you do the warrior poses, those can be quite hard, but I felt that after just a few sessions, it became much easier to just hold my arms out. And I also really like the fact that yoga is so accessible and you can do it anywhere. When you travel and you just need a mat, or, well, you don't even need a mat, you can just do it on the ground or the floor. And it's such an easy workout you can always have with you. So I would say, like, almost from the start, I kind of knew that I wanted to dive deeper into yoga, and a dream has always been to be a teacher. And then I was looking a bit online. I thought that maybe I would go to India or like Bali or something and do it. And I don't know, maybe I didn't really have the time to go away if you go away in a education like that, it's at least a month, I think. And I hadn't really found the time because I was studying and working. But then eventually, when the pandemic hit, I thought that, okay, now it's actually the time. And the truth is that I was also going through a breakup, and I needed to find a way not to think about this person. So I thought that, well, if I sign up for yoga course, I know it's going to be 200 hours where I can't think about him. So that's going to be great. So yeah, for several reasons, the timing was actually really good. And I signed up for a 200 hours online teacher training, actually. So, well, it was because of the pandemic, but I also really I felt that it resonated a lot with me to do something online. I always loved the online format. When I studied at NYU, I had a lot of classes online, and I always think it's so flexible, it's so easy, and I realized quite quickly with this yoga training that it was actually an advantage that we had it online, because we were able to go through so many poses and different body types and people. Just like when you see it online and you can look at photos and you can, I don't know, it just became really efficient, I think. And it was still a lot of work and like practical work as well. So the course I signed up was with a teacher called Brett Larkin, and she was, I believe, the first teacher who started doing something online. She was the first yoga teacher actually launching an online training, and this was before the pandemic, but then obviously it became even more popular when the pandemic hit. But yeah, I will have to say I'm super happy with the education. I thought it was great. It was over the course of a few weeks, I believe, maybe a few months, and it was a lot of work. A lot of work. So even though it's online, it does not get easier. I would say maybe it's even more work because it's so like extensive and it gets long like that when you have it over several weeks and months. And yeah, I have nothing negative to say, actually. It was really good. The teachers were great, and we were still with the same group of people over the whole course of the training. And yeah, it's a very extensive program. We learned like the more traditional hatha and vinyasa poses. We got into yin yoga, some like business behind yoga and so on. So yeah, you really get everything you need with that education. And you also got like a physical workbook as well. So yeah, I thought it was great. And then obviously you have an exam in the end, like you record a session that you hold. And yeah, I just think it was great. And I think for anyone who likes yoga, a teacher training is so interesting, because I feel like especially yoga is so much about the philosophy, which is hard to cover or at least go into depth when you have a class. So, because classes are pretty much only about the asanas, but in yoga, asana is just one of the 8 parts or limbs, as we say. So there is so much you will learn from a yoga education. And I had been practicing for almost 15 years when I did my training, and I felt that I learned so many new things. I felt that I knew all of the different poses, the asanas, and maybe that also helped me when it was online, because I didn't really feel that I had to have someone correcting me, because I'd done the poses so many times. So I would say I knew not everything, of course, but like a lot of the technique and the different postures. But yeah, I still felt that, oh my God, it was so many new things about the whole philosophy and history about yoga that is really interesting. So if you love yoga and you're interested in that part of it as well, like the philosophy and background, I would definitely recommend you taking a course. And of course, you can have the education and just practice yoga and like deepen your own practice. But I do want to say that like 200 hours, it's a lot, and it will be a lot of work and time and energy, and even more work apart from those 200 hours. So it is a big commitment. So maybe, if you have the time, that's amazing if you want to dedicate all that time and energy towards your own practice only. But I can really encourage you to become a teacher and teach others too, because it's great fun. And I believe it's quite common that some people might change their mind. They might start the training and feeling like, no, I'm just doing this for me. But then as the education continues, many people are like, well, this is actually something I want to teach after all. So yeah, that's a little bit about my yoga training. Again, it was with Brett Larkin, and she has something called uplifted yoga, and I have only a lot of good things to say about it. I loved it. It suited me perfectly. But I think, again, like if you are choosing between what education to pick, take the one that resonates with you, what works with you in your life right now. Maybe it's better for you to go away for a month and do it more like an intense, shorter version of it. But if you don't want to go away, if you want to stay at home and you have time that you can dedicate over the course of a few weeks or months or so, online is really great as well. So that would be my recommendation, to just look at what works for you, what resonates with you in your life. So moving on to Pilates. I did my training, when was that? Maybe a year later after my yoga training. And I did the STOT Pilates mat work training. I did the foundation course. And then I think a year later, I did the advanced mat work. And I've also taken the STOT bar foundation course. So mat work, foundation and advanced, and then the bar course. And the STOT Pilates is a contemporary version of the classical Pilates method. And I would say that one of the main differences is how you work with the pelvic placement and the spine. So in general, STOT Pilates encourages a neutral spine, whereas the classical Pilates works with something called imprint. And I mean, it depends on the client and the types of exercise and so on, of course, but that's like one of the main differences. But you can say it's like the classic Pilates exercises that you learn. And I believe that in one way it was not as extensive as the yoga education, but it was still a lot of work since it included a lot of self-studies and self-practice and classes that you have to take. And I personally think it was great to learn the foundation and the technique behind the postures, but I have to say that I think the STOT education needs a bit of an update, because like the workbook you get, the images are black and white and you can see that they're not from even like this century. I mean, yeah, it's at least like 20, 30 something years old, some of the images, and some, you get like a DVD with education, and everybody in my group were like, well, I don't have a DVD anymore. I threw that away like 15 years ago. So, it's a little bit old fashioned in that sense. And I think there could be a lot of improvements when it comes to making it more inspiring. But I really do think it was a great course. You learn a lot and you go through the different postures and techniques and modifications. And I think hopefully there will be a more updated version, and there will be even more Pilates educations in the future, since I feel like Pilates has grown a lot over the past few years. I was really happy with the teachers that I took the training with. It was just that I believe STOT Pilates can be a little bit old-fashioned. That's just my opinion. But you go through so much, and my training was over the course of, I think, 6 months, but then we met during a few weekends and we had to self-practice and so on in between, and had homeworks and so on. So yeah, it's also a big commitment, but maybe I don't know exactly how many hours it's supposed to be, including your self-studies and practices, but it's still a lot of time and energy in this as well. And for me, I'd been doing yoga for 15 years. I knew so much already when I took my education, but Pilates, I've only done it for like 2 years, I think, when I started my training. So I felt that there were still a few exercises that I hadn't really done and gone through. So there were more things for me to learn. And then the bar foundation course was only 1 day, and that's designed for people that are already teachers, I would say, and have a foundation in Pilates. And I absolutely love bar, and I've taken a lot of classes lately. So I will hopefully start to record some new classes for the retreat soon. And this is something I want to dive deeper into, because I think bar is just such an amazing workout. And I really want to do another bar course, actually. So these are the trainings that I have done, and I am actually currently doing a yin yoga training online. It's with a company called Yoga Union Bali. And even though yin was actually included in my 200-hour training, I just felt that I wanted to dive deeper into this and get the specific yin certificate for it. So that's why I signed up. And I have to tell you, like, I've almost become addicted to courses within health and wellness. That's why I've taken so many already. So whenever there is a course that seems nice, I sign up for it. So yeah, that's something I'm currently doing. And yeah, I can recommend that, even though I feel like maybe I would have needed some more accountability because this is entirely online. Well, it was actually over a week, but then I ended up not being able to do it that week. And that's 50 hours. So I have that left, and I hope to complete it this summer just to get it over with, and so I can move on to the next training. And I plan to continue with my educations from now on. And I would love to do a 300-hour yoga training as well. And something that's even more on top of my list, I think, right now is to do the pre and postnatal Pilates and yoga trainings. And I feel like it's so important. I feel like this is something I have to know more about. So that's on my wish list. And I think it's something, all teachers should know more about, because there are actually some really important things you need to think about if you just had a baby or if you're pregnant. So I think that is essential, actually, if you want to grow as a teacher. So yeah, I am very happy that I've done these trainings, and they have both been quite different when I compare the two, but I also feel like I've learned things in each training that have been able to help me with other things, like the things I know in yoga about the body or the different postures there. That has helped me when it comes to forming my Pilates workouts and so on, and then the same the other way around. And I think it goes without saying, but I think it has become quite popular over the past few years to teach yoga, Pilates, and other workouts. And I have seen a few teachers that I believe don't actually have taken the required educations. And I mean, I don't judge anyone. Everybody does what they want to do. But while I, as a student, personally wouldn't take a class with someone who hasn't done the education, like I wouldn't want to have a teacher in Pilates who actually hasn't had a Pilates education, I also wouldn't recommend you as a future teacher to teach something without the proper education. I believe it will be both stressful and hard to actually create classes that will be both safe for the clients, as well as allowing them to get the most out of the workouts. And I think Pilates and yoga might look simple, but there is actually so much technique that goes into it. And I honestly feel that the more I learn, the less I know. For each course that I've taken, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know anything. I'm such a beginner in this. And it's interesting how you start to feel that. And prior to teaching, I was actually a bit confident. I was like, well, I've done it and I've taken so many classes. I can do this. It's not a big deal. But then when I started my trainings and I was like, oh, okay, wait, there's so many things I have to learn. So you do you, but I would just recommend that you take the education that you need, and that will help you to feel more confident and secure and just feel like you can be authentic and honest and actually do something, not just because it's fun, but also because you know and you can help and you have the right technique and you know it's safe and you can accommodate different body types or levels or pre or postnatal. I mean, there is actually a lot. It might look really simple when we just move those arms and lift those legs, but it is a lot. It's so much technique, so many things to know. So in order for your students not to hurt themselves and for you to teach the right technique with the most effective cueing, I really recommend you taking any courses that you need. And also as a student, to make sure that your teacher is qualified, because especially in Pilates, I feel like there's so much technique you need to know, and you need to work with your muscles in the right way. Just a simple exercise like you're on all fours and you lift one leg up. If you know what kind of muscles to engage and the pace and the alignment and so on, that will change the whole exercise. We can do that. We can lift an arm, we can lift a leg, and we won't feel anything. But then we can do it with the right technique and the right cueing and alignment and so on, and it will just become a completely different experience. And I think that's really important to know, that Pilates is all about the alignment, the engagements of the muscles, the breath, the pelvic placement. I mean, there's so many things that we need to know. So I really encourage you to take a course. But that being said, I think I almost got a bit overwhelmed and scared to teach after my training, because I also compared myself with those like really amazing teachers that I had at my studio I was working at already. And I just thought that, how am I supposed to be a good teacher? How am I supposed to remember all these things and set up and design a class that includes all these components, like the best exercises, the right cueing, the most effective, so many things. So I don't think we should be discouraged and scared, but just mindful that, there's a lot of things to learn and that goes into a class. But again, I just think that the best way to just overcome that imposter syndrome and stressful feeling that you can't do it, I think we should just start right away. And yes, you won't be an expert in the beginning, like with everything, even after a course. When you've completed the course, that's when the actual journey and the education start, because that's when you start to hold classes and you will learn so much from that. So my best tip would be to just start. Don't be scared. Don't wait too long after your education to teach your first class. I think I waited a little bit too long. I believe I actually waited over a year from completing my training to start teaching. So I do wish that I had started before, because now, like, once I started, I realized teaching was actually the best education for me. I learned so much from that. So yeah, that's just a tip to think about when you are done with your training. I am just quickly interrupting this episode to remind you about a few discount codes and offers I think you might like if you're interested in wellness, Pilates, yoga, and so on. I am a proud ambassador for these two brands that I am so grateful to be working with. And the first one is Sakara. And the code to use if you are a new customer to Sakara and want to try their amazing meal programs and other products like their incredible granolas, bars, teas, and so on, is XO Health by M. And that will give you 20% off your first order. I have provided a link to their website and the code here in this episode's show notes as well. And I also have an amazing friends and family discount if you're interested in the health coaching school IIN, the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. I absolutely loved my education there and can highly recommend doing it if you're interested in holistic health. So you just use my name, Mathilde Bergeland, as a referral when you sign up for the school, and you will receive the discount. The spelling of my name and the link to IN, as well as a free sample class, can also be found in this episode's show notes. And then last but not least, I just wanted to say that if you're interested in trying my Pilates and yoga classes, you can find them on my membership platform, The Retreat. And in addition to these classes, you also find healthy recipes, hypnosis audios, journaling prompts, and a whole module on manifestation, rituals, and more. And if you use the code podcast, you get 10% off either the first year, the first 6 months, or the first month, depending on what membership you choose. So go to healthbym-theretreat.com and become a member if you're interested in checking out these classes and the platform. Now back to the episode. So again, just a few tips before you pick your training. So just decide whether you want to do it in person or online, and just pick whatever resonates with you. Maybe go over the pros and cons for each, see what works, and then I think, whatever we pick, it's going to be good. But maybe you want to also look up the teachers and see if it resonates with them and so on. And if you're interested in the online format, I believe that Brett Larkin has a podcast, and it's called Uplifted Yoga, or the Uplifted Podcast or something. And she has an episode there where she talks about the background of her education, how she started it and what the purpose was and so on. So I think it's a really good episode to listen to where she talks about the format and so on. So yeah, check out Brett Larkin's podcast if you're interested in that. And then when you have chosen your training, again, just remember that it requires a lot of energy, time, and it also costs some money. So you want to make sure that you set aside time for it and really do the work and dedicate the time that's required, because that will just give you a better experience, I think. So make sure that you don't have 1,000 other things on your schedule when you do a training like this, because it will be a lot. And another tip for during your training is to always take notes. I love to write. I love to write my to-do lists and organize and plan things and so on. So I've always loved to take notes, but I've done it during my trainings, and also even when it's a practical class or study, I think it's great to take notes, because at least that's how I work. Like, I forget things if I just keep them in my head. So take a lot of notes, and then experiment yourself with different exercises and postures. So really doing that kind of work as well, not just the writing and so on. So do test classes for your friends, or start to teach online with your friends and family. As soon as you can, you should start to teach a class. It doesn't need to be, the longest or you can start with just teaching a warm-up or a cool-down or just a little sequence for abs or whatever it might be. But I think it's good if you have never, ever been teaching a class. I think it's good to, as soon as you can, just jump in and start to teach, and know that you will learn so much over time as you continue to teach. And another thing that, in my opinion, is super important is to continue to take other classes as well. I have actually dedicated a lot of time during these past 2 months for this myself, and I have learned so much. I've taken at least one class a day, which is quite a lot, but I think it's the best way to learn, to be honest. And even though you take a class within, spinning or a boot camp, you can still get inspiration and find cueing that will work for your yoga or Pilates classes that you're teaching. So I would really encourage you to just continue to work out, to take other teachers' classes. And we learn so much from that. And you can also get inspiration when it comes to music, or ideas on how to begin a class or end a class or something else. So that is something I can't recommend enough. And I actually think it's our responsibility as a teacher to do this, since we learn so much. And even if we have completed our training, our journey as a teacher has only just begun when we complete it. And I believe that we will forever learn. I will always be a student within these two fields, and with everything in life, really. And I think it's easy to get stuck with the same kind of exercises and cueings if we don't get any outside influence or inspiration. And also, when you begin, and you might not have the best self-confidence when teaching, and you might feel that you aren't as prepared as you want to be, I think it's always good to have a teacher in mind that you can feel inspired by, and that you can have that as your kind of alter ego that you step into. I don't really believe that we can copy anyone, because we all have our unique energy and way of teaching and creating things. But I think it's great that we do, find inspiration from other teachers. There's always something you can learn from someone else. And like I said, what kind of music to use, how to phrase that kind of cueing or something else. So don't just do your own classes. Really, really go out there, explore, try new classes, even other types of workouts that you normally don't really do, because there's so much you can learn. Every teacher does what works for them, of course, but I will never only do my own workouts, as I believe that doesn't help me to grow and learn as a teacher. I feel like the more I learn, the less I know, and I know I will learn forever. So I just think it's such a great way to deepen your practice and knowledge as a teacher. So yeah, just try a bunch of different classes. I usually take notes on my phone afterwards, and I can write down songs sometimes, or quite often actually ask for the playlist, because maybe there was a song that got me inspired, or I write down the cueing or the exercise and so on. So have a little note in your phone and write down just a few things after each class that you take, and that will be such a great asset for you to have when you form your other classes. And another tip is to visit both studios in person, but also try different online classes as well. And I personally love the mix of teaching in person and online. I think you learn a lot from both in different ways. When it's in person, you learn how to adapt and be flexible with your exercises depending on who shows up, and you also learn how to hold space and speak in front of a group of people. It's live, and you need to give a lot of your own energy. And when it's online, it also requires you to deliver a lot of your energy, but in a different way. And it can be harder sometimes when it's just you in the room. I actually think it's harder to record online, especially the on-demand classes, because I sometimes get too picky about my cueing, and, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I feel like there's less room for mistakes if it's recorded and online. But I think try both, try and see what works for you. I think you can learn a lot from both when you take classes as a student and you take classes in person and online, but also as a teacher, because it's quite different teaching in person and online. So yeah, it's really good to do both, in my opinion. And just a few tips on how to build and create a good class, in my opinion. And again, I'm not an expert, like I've been saying. I feel like I've just begun my journey as a teacher, even though I have been a teacher for some time now, a few years. But yeah, the more I learn, the less I know, and I feel like there's so much more I want to know about Pilates, yoga, bar, and so on. But these are the things that have worked for me and that I usually think about when I create a class. So I like to have an intention, and especially starting the class with setting an intention. So just setting an intention for me as a teacher, what my intention with the class is, but then I also like to include that in some way for the students when we start. And then I also have my focus and what the peak pose or the peak sequence would be. I really try to make both the beginning and the ending a bit thoughtful. I like to start with the same exercises in the beginning when I do my physical classes, like in person, because I think when you start the same way, you kind of, get the body ready, and you kind of build that muscle memory almost, that that you're getting warm and so on. I don't know. I just felt like for me it has been nice to start not exactly the same way, but yeah, when I've been teaching in person, I've had a similar warm up. And then online, I actually like to create different warm-ups, but I also like to include a bit of a grounding before. So like taking a few breaths or taking that time to set the intention. And then when I teach in person, I always include a short relaxation exercise in the end, some breathing and some intention setting. And sometimes I add something to think about that we are grateful for. And one thing that I love, this is my favorite thing to end a class. And if you've taken a class with me, I always have this in person. And it is to use the breath and fill up yourself with any, emotion or intention or feeling you need, thinking about something you want to manifest, something you're grateful for, and so on. So really ending with filling up the lungs with air and filling up yourself with whatever you need for the day ahead or the week coming up or something. And then exhale and release it. I think that's a very nice way to just finish with a more relaxing and calm feeling. And then I also love to include incenses, especially in yoga. And I think that really it gives something extra for the students. And as a student, I love when there is some Palo Santo or sage or another incense during a class. I think it's so nice. And another thing I've done in other classes, but that's more when I've done sound healing or Reiki or other meditations, I think it can be fun to have everybody been able to pick a card after class, and you can definitely do that after yoga or Pilates too if you want to. So you just have a little oracle card deck, or sometimes I have written notes with some quotes or reminders, and everybody get to pick one from a little bag that I have or something, or bowl where you can put them in. So I think those small things, it doesn't cost anything really, but it adds something so great for the client. And that's actually another tip that I want to share as well. And that is to, when you as a teacher create a class, imagine yourself being the client. So create something that you as a student or a client want to experience. And I think a way to learn that and remember that is, again, to take other teachers' classes. And another thing to mention about that actually is that even though you go and take a class and you might not even be that inspired or impressed or happy with it, you still learn something. And sometimes that will actually give you more than when you take a class that you absolutely loved. So, for example, especially when you are new, and I mean, I can just speak for myself, but in my case, sometimes I feel like my self-confidence as a teacher is a little bit too low, and I need a boost in that sometimes. And when I go and take a class at a really fancy studio or by a really known teacher, for example, and I actually don't find it that great, that can actually help me to boost my self-confidence and feel like, oh, okay, well, I'm not that bad, actually. I can do this. My classes are quite good. So you will always learn something from all the classes that you take, even if there are things that you know that you don't want to include yourself. And again, really encouraging you to take as many other classes that you can, and to imagine yourself being a student and client, and you create the class for the version of you who is a client, basically. And another good thing I usually do is that I have a few go-to exercises in mind that I can always throw in if I forget a sequence or exercise. When I teach in person, I actually make up the class during the class, to be honest. I rarely have something pre-planned when I teach in person. I don't know, it just has become that way. But when I record, I always know exactly what kind of exercises and sequences that are coming. But sometimes I just do it as I go. And I mean, of course, I have some sort of focus and sense, like, okay, this is the peak pose, or this is the focus, this is the ab part, or this time is for the legs or lower body and so on. But yeah, I think it's good to always have your favorites or your go-to poses and exercises that you can always throw in. And same with modifications and exercises for beginners or injured, but also pre or postnatal women, that you have some modifications and exercises you know will work for those kind of people if you have in-person classes and they show up. And another thing when it comes to building a good class is to add props. I mean, even though there's so much we can do with our own body weight, I feel like when I teach yoga, I work with only the body weight, obviously, but then I think when I teach Pilates, I absolutely love to include different props, because I think it just adds so much to the workout. And the props are really fun in Pilates, in my opinion. And I love resistance bands, ankle weights, hand weights. The Pilates ball is actually, I think, one of my all-time favorite prop. The Pilates circle. You can also use like a box as well, or a block. A yoga block is actually great to use, not just in yoga, but also in Pilates. And you can do so many things with that. You can add gliders, but you can also experiment with a towel or water bottle if you're traveling, or pillows and so on. So there's so much you can do and be creative with. So I really encourage you to try out a lot of different props as well. So I hope that this has been inspiring and that this episode might have helped you a little bit if you're thinking about becoming a teacher. If you're interested in doing it, I can really recommend it, as I think it is so rewarding, so fun, and it's nice to always have this knowledge and skill that, we can always put together a class and teach a workout wherever we are. It's also really fun to deepen our own practice and learn the techniques and background, history, and so on around the workouts that we love. So yeah, I can't recommend enough taking these types of educations. I think it's been amazing. I am really looking forward to go even deeper into my practice and grow as a teacher and learn more, sign up for even more courses. I've taken so many already, not just like the Pilates and yoga, but sound healing, Reiki, hypnosis, coaching, But once you start, be prepared to get addicted and just want to do more and more and more. But just let me know if you have any other questions. I know I can't really cover everything in one episode, and I might do another one if you have any specific other questions that I didn't get to cover here. So just write to me if there's anything else that you want to know about yoga, Pilates, or any other education really. So thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to leave a review and rating if you like the show, and send this episode to someone you think would be interested in becoming a teacher. And I hope that you will have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care and good luck with your educations and journey as a teacher.